if you guys have seen any of my other painting videos or crafting videos, you know that I don't like to put any paint or glue down the sink. It's actually one of my least favorite parts about a project like that is the cleanup. I don't like washing especially glue off of paintbrushes, and I don't like having to put all that in the sink and possibly ruin the pipes. And so I kind of started getting into the habit a couple years ago of instead of having to wash all this stuff and you know, get it in the sink and ruin my sink and maybe clog the drains, I decided to just start letting it dry and then just picking it off in a couple of days, depending on how thick the paint or the glue was. So that's what I do now. And then actually, I don't know if having a messy paint palette bothers you, but it doesn't really bother me at all. I kind of like that it gives it some character. I think that if it's a tool that you're using for paint, like an apron, it should have some paint on it. I think if you have paint clothes or an apron and you never want to get any paint on it, I think you're kind of missing the point of it, because that's why you wear it, right? And that's kind of why you use a palette, because otherwise you'd just use, you know, a plate out of the cabinet. But you don't do that because you're using something that's okay to mess up. So it's not a big deal if you have layers of paint on these little containers. Now, because the glue does get a little tacky, so unless you're using these containers for other things, and maybe sometimes, you know, you pour some beads into a little cup or something to make them easier to sort, and you're working on something, you need a little space for something small so they don't roll away, then you don't really want the bottom of the bowl to be tacky with glue or paint, because then maybe those beads that you're working with or whatever they are will stick in the paint or stick in the glue. And you'll be able to get them out, but it just could be annoying if you're just trying to work on something, grabbing them quickly and being able to move a little easier with that. So it does kind of clear out the bottom of your container very nicely when you've got some glue dried in there. If you don't have nails, you can just use some scissors or something to kind of get that up. And even if you have nails, sometimes it helps to get it started a little bit and peel it up. We did a lot of really gluey projects last week here with the kids. We did these really pretty paper flowers, but each layer had to be glued together and kind of stuck on top of each other that way. And we just use Elmer's glue. Sometimes we'll use Mod Podge, or sort of like a watery paste, which you could create the same sort of solution if you just used Elmer's glue, clear or white, and then added some water to it. You want to mix it really well. But and then we just always use our little glue brushes, you know, the cheapy little plastic bristle brushes to apply the glue, so we don't ruin any of our good brushes, because those aren't really made for glue anyways. And then whatever was left, of course, then they stuck together. Whatever was left over just sort of settled in the bottom of the cup, and it's just so easy to peel it out. In fact, because I wanted to do this video and show how easy it is to peel, I wouldn't let the kids peel any of it. Some of them wanted to peel the glue out for me, but I said no, because I wanted to do a video with it. Now, you guys also probably know that I don't like to waste anything, so, you know, if I had any paint left over in a palette, sometimes I like to take a nice flat brush and kind of gather it all up and scoop it onto the brush, and then put it back into the bottle if I can. And most of the time I do that because I don't want to waste anything, especially glue or Mod Podge. But there we go. But in this case, some of our glue had already started to dry because we've been working with it for over an hour or so, and you know, with just a thin layer of glue in a bowl that doesn't stay wet for very long, and so it'll start to get that sort of a crusty film over the top. And at that point, I wouldn't want to pour that back into the bottle because we would have some lumps in there, you know, some partially dried glue. And it just wouldn't work very well on another project if we were to pour it back out of the bottle after that. There it goes. These are little paint cups, I guess, made for mixing, maybe made for, probably good for watercolor, because when you're doing watercolor, you know, you need something that's not as shallow as the regular palette. And these tend to be a little shallow, you know, from the side view there. That's not very deep, so if you were going to put some water in there, it could overflow. And so I think these are made for watercolor, just because it's deeper, and if you were going to put in like the pigment, just the coloring that comes in a small tube, you'd put some of that in this cup and then add your water, as much water as you need to make it the color, the shade that you'd like, and that's what these are good for. So I have a whole bunch of these, you know, and I reuse them. I've never had to throw one away because nothing ever happens to them. They don't ever get cracks in them, and they never break. But, you know, I know these are going to get a lot of good use. If you're just doing something yourself at home, there's no need to buy anything fancy like this just because it's down the art supply aisle. Just because it's there and it's, you know, only a few dollars doesn't mean you need something like this. You can very easily use yogurt cups, empty fruit cups, if you buy those for your kids. Those are perfect, actually. Those little fruit cups, they even look nice. You know, it doesn't have a brand name or anything on there, so they kind of look like something nice you'd want to save. They're just clear plastic, you know, and they're stackable. I like that about them because, you know, then they save space. You don't have to clear out a shelf for them or anything. Just throw them in your paint drawer. So that's pretty nice. There's mostly just paint in this one, not a whole lot of glue. Kind of have a pile of all this crusty stuff here that I have to go throw away later. Some people say this is relaxing. So I guess after a long week, maybe this is something you save for yourself if you enjoy doing this. Kind of mindless, but can be kind of fun. Sometimes the kids will see the stains in the palette and they'll recognize a palette they used on another day, and they'll say, "Oh, that's my paint palette from the other day." I'll say, "How do you know?" And I'll say, "It's got the same colors that I used." So then they find out my secret that I don't like to wash stuff, and I'll just let it dry so I can be lazy. That's okay. The glossier paints really peel off a lot easier than the ones that are matte. Those are kind of stuck in there for now until maybe if some glue got on there, then I could peel it up, but definitely don't peel up as easy as the glossy finish. There's these metallic paints that I love so much. They're just so shimmery, and they dry like that too, so it's cool to use those. Alright. Got some glue on here, I can tell. Sometimes when I look back at the mess in the palette, I can be reminded of whatever project I was working on when that color got in there. So, for instance, on this one, the neon orange, I can see that and remember right away, oh yeah, that's probably from the alien painting that I did. And I did like a Route 66 theme painting, and I put some crazy neon colors in there. I don't get to use my neon colors a lot, so I do remember every project that uses neon colors. There it is right there. That was a fun one. I just got to use all the neon colors and did some fun stuff with that. The small lettering was a pain to do though, trying to keep it neat. Sometimes if the glue is only in one spot, I will spread it out a little bit to make sure that I kind of get it everywhere. That way I can pull off some more paint as I go. So I will do that sometimes, and that's why it's all over the place. And a nice thing about doing all of this is now when you stack your palettes, they are a lot easier to separate, because if you remember when I was trying to separate the little cups earlier, they were really stuck together and they didn't want to come apart, because not because they were glued together. No, I didn't stack them when they were still wet, but because they just get tacky. Like I said, you know, the glue keeps it a little sticky, and so it kind of stuck back together. So now I'll have an easier time separating those palettes when I need to give out palettes for a class. Oh, last little one. It's really thin. It's like tape. Come on. There it goes.